Paintball Podcatty, broadcasted from the shores of the great freshwater Bay of Green, the man who has put his balls in more faces than Ron Jeremy, SAS Scruffy.
Hey, and thank you guys. Thank you very kindly, John, for that wonderful intro. It is Scruffy here. It is Wednesday, July 19th, and it is a glorious day to be a paintballer. Oh, baby. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things coming up this weekend. Unfortunately, I will not be able to go with my career change, but I still wanted to bring it because it is worthy of note that the Challenge for Children is going on. It's hosted by Splat Tag. At least I think it's hosted by Splat Tag. I should have probably double-checked now that I say that. But either way, it's out there by Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and it is a wonderful event. This is a proceed charity event that the money and the paint cost and all of that goes to the Children's Hospital in Minnesota. This is awesome. I think that we need more events like this, taking care of children, you know, just as a community, as paintballers, as a community, like donating to these things. One, it helps spread, and hopefully these kids will get healthy enough that they will see paintball as a valid option for them to try later, you know, as a sport or as a physical activity. But at the same point, it shows that we care as a community, that the reason that I love paintball is that there is not a tighter knit community as far as like a recreational sports goes. As soon as you meet a paintballer, and I mean like a hardcore paintballer, at least for me, I know that immediately I have something in common with this person and that we're going to hit it off, whether we disagree politically, whether we're totally different, at least we still have that common ground, and it becomes a great talking point. Some of the people I've met playing paintball, Brandon Page, a whole bunch of people. He comes to mind. The Skibbas, Neil Sitton from Arcadia, Cool Breeze, like all these people. There are so many. Ryan Reckman, he's a great guy from out that way. Even guys like the leader of Bob White, Mr. Krause, he's phenomenal. Just great people. And I can't speak more highly of these people, you know, as far as ballers go and as far as the mentality and like being there for each other. Like the sport, these are totally random people that I would have never met otherwise. Like some of these guys I've met literally on Facebook and just sat and ended up chatting for hours upon hours. Other guys I've met at the field, and it just surprises me at how well that the community pulls together and they realize that like we're in it for each other as well as we're in it for ourselves. So you can't really separate the community from the player at certain points. It's almost impossible. And I think that is something that needs to continue. I mean, you see charity games and benefit games a lot, but not something of this scale. And I think that we need to see more scenarios where the purpose of the game is twofold. One, it's to go out and have an awesome scenario game. And the second purpose of it is to either raise awareness or to raise funds, or just networking with some of these people is phenomenal. I mean, there's a lady, and gosh, I can't remember her site. I met her down at Hell last year, and they were selling T-shirts for the Make-A-Wish. And basically, these were kids, or something similar to Make-A-Wish. And these were kids with terminal cancer, kids that wouldn't get to play paintball otherwise. And they were raising money to bring these players out to like Hell Survivors and some of these legendary fields to get them out on the field. And gosh, that must be tough on them. And I really can't think of her name right now. It escapes me. Man, that's going to bug me for a little bit. I guess you guys will have to listen in at a later date, and I'll get you the info on that charity. I know that they sell T-shirts every year, and there's a good following down at Hell Survivors, and I know probably somebody will point it out to me, and I'll be able to. They're just, I can't even remember. I can't remember her name. Very, very seldomly does that happen to me. Anyway, though, in today's show, I did have a guy lined up. Unfortunately, the scheduling just did not work. I mean, I'm in the middle of a fairly major change as far as career goes, and So it's going to take a little bit of adapting to. My first day in was yesterday, and it turned into like a 14-hour shift, no, not 14. It was like 12. But still, it was not expected to run that long with the commute and everything. So, it's going to take a little bit of adjusting of my schedule and to figure out when I'll actually have time to record and that kind of thing, and when people are available. And as always, this is my second hobby, so I have to do it when time is available to me for it. I know that with traveling down to World at War, that kind of messed me up a little bit, but it was so great because like just the networking involved and the talking to people and whatnot. That was really awesome. So there's some challenges I'm going to be facing. I do have a few shows lined up. I mean, I do believe this is the 9th or 10th technical show, but only the 8th that's hosted on my podcast site. I'm probably going to rebroadcast my second episode. The first episode I'm going to leave lost to time. You guys don't need to hear it. If you really want to hear it, email me, sas.scruffy@gmail.com, and I will figure out a way to send you a link. It's like an hour-long expose on what not to do in podcasting, basically. So, today though, with the missing of my guest, I wanted to shift gears a little bit, and I was going to talk a little bit about my history and my past in the sport, because there's a couple of times that like people have said stuff to me or have made references to things in the past, and they just might be lost. Some of the finer points might be lost as to what those references mean. More so, I wanted to touch on my time with Delta 9. Now that I am an SAS member, this is my second year with this club. I love the club. Don't get me wrong, brothers. I am all about SAS. But at a certain point in your career, you're going to have ups and downs. And it's just as important as for players to look back on their low points in the career playing paintball as it is looking at their high points and their triumphs. I mean, we as humans have this uncanny ability to basically remember the good and forget all of the bad. Like, memories really only stay with you if they're really, really good or really, really bad. The mediocre ones just kind of blend away with time, and it's a blessing and a curse, because obviously if you remembered absolutely everything, you could potentially drive yourself crazy going, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. But that's not really the purpose of this show. I'm not going to sit here and list off things that I should have done and sounded like a salty person or talk about like how great it was. No, I'm going to be real here, and I'm going to speak from the heart, because Delta 9 for me was 7 years of my life. 7, maybe a little bit longer. I mean, you could technically say it was about 9 years out of my 18-year career in the sport, or my 18 years playing in the sport. Because I was playing with that core group of people. It's just that we really didn't travel outside of our local area, which was Commando USA and Nelson Field, which were the two closest. There was another paintball field, Adventure, in there that I knew the owner of, but it wasn't really like a big full-time field. It was like somebody's backwoods and more of kind of like a hobby field. You know how paintball was back when it started. You get those fields that are like weekender fields, and then you get the fields that are there where the owner's there every single day and it's their bread and butter. Obviously, I have a wonderful, wonderful place for weekend fields. There are some huge weekend fields, like Hill Survivors is predominantly a weekend field. They're really only open Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm trying to think. Nelson was a bread and butter field. Adventure up by us before they went out of business, they were just kind of a weekender field, private groups, small groups, that kind of thing. But of which the only one field in the area that remains is Commando, and that was one of the two bread and butter fields. It wasn't that Commando put Nelson out of business. Actually, the field owner left because of health concerns for his daughter. She was born with a condition, and I don't really want to go into it because it's not my place to talk about it. But she was born with a health condition, and he had to close the field because he just had to value the time with his daughter and raising the kid and kids more so than what was going on. It would be a wonderful conversation to have with the owner of that field too, Mr. Nelson. I think that would be a great conversation because he's another old timer and like new paintball from when it was very, very little and was heavily involved. And he's probably got some still pretty solid insights into at least the old days and the way that it was and how far that we've come. But anyway, back to Delta. So when we formed, we were pretty predominantly Nelson field. Commando was all right, but the better field, the field that had the best paint and had the best urban course was Nelson at the time. And that's where Bouge, SAS Jax, and I, with a couple other people, who we called, one was Mechanic, that was Bryce, and then we had Rob, and he was all right. He was a good player, a little hot-tempered, but he was a good player, and he was a good friend, and we were a good core group of friends. We played, every weekend, sometimes twice a weekend, and that's really where we got our foundation in woods ball. I mean, yeah, they had Team Boom coming out and practicing for a while. I was hooked up with a couple of guys, Nelson's New Sense, practiced with them for a little bit, but predominantly it was a woods ball field, and it was probably the best woods ball field in the area. It really was. I mean, you're talking well-groomed and whatnot. The guy took care of it. But at the same point, he was also very, very good and very, very, I guess, purist in the sport because, yeah, he wanted us to tried to get me to buy a Mini forever and ever and ever. And then finally when he closed, I got a Mini, which go figure, just the way that it was. But we played, Tippmans, E-Trigger Tippmans and that. But when we get in with like a rental group or a private group or even the open play group some days, he would come up to us and he'd go, guys, you're just tearing them up. You guys are just tearing them up. I need you guys to like either take it easy on them or, and we'd look at him and go, we are taking it easy. And he would go, all right. And he'd come back and he would hand out SL682 pumps. He goes, I know you guys aren't paying for rentals and whatnot, and I know you guys have your own equipment, but I'm going to take your equipment and you're going to use these. And just to even it up, make the public group feel better, make the private group you're with feel a little bit more at ease because you can't just rattle balls off. And we hated it. Oh, did I hate it at first. But at the same point, it really, really made you concentrate on your skills, on your movement, on your action. It taught you that paintball wasn't just about throwing paint. It was about your movement. It was about your timing. It was about knowing when to move, when to duck, when to stay low, when to change bunkers, when they weren't looking, that kind of stuff. It really, really excelled in that. And that was the mentality we took when his field closed down and we decided as a group that we were going to move into the tournament sector. And that's when we got really big into UWL. I mean, we lost our home. We kind of lost our identity, our goal of being a scenario team based out of this field, helping promote this field. And we'd lost our identity at that point. And our captain at the time was Mechanic, and his father had passed and he was going through some issues, and we lost kind of our home base. And I ended up taking over the team for him, taking the pressure off of him as captain, and did that. And I guess there was just really nobody else that really wanted the job at the time, or saw it as a thing. And we went on to do the UWL for 3 seasons. The first season, the first time ever, we got our butts kicked, and we came in thinking really highly of ourselves. We were practicing with speedball teams. We were doing everything we could. We were very serious, very professional about it, and we got our freaking asses waxed at the first event. And then we went to Pittsburgh, and we did really well in Pittsburgh. That very next tournament, we went from the bottom team to 5th. Then we went and shot Chicago. And when we shot at the International Masters in Chicago, we went from a 5th place team to the number one seeded team in the tournament and lost, which, that's a good spot. That's a very, very, very steep learning curve to take with a first-time tournament team. The next season we did 2 UWL events that were close to us that year. And we went on to do, 2. And we went on to do the Hell Survivors Great Lakes Open, which we won. And then we went on to do the Badlands International Masters, where we just got our butts kicked. We did not have a good showing at Masters. We just couldn't get stuff together on time. And unfortunately, I think that was more a symptom of us doing so well in the first event that we went to that everyone kind of laxed off coming into the second event. And, I got family and I got this. And we didn't practice as hard because we thought we were something badass, and we fell off real quick. I'm not going to even sugarcoat that. Like, we should have been working harder. And after that loss, the internal finger pointing and this and that, and even after the win in Michigan, there was still internal finger pointing and stuff going on. And, basically by the end of that next season, I had been captain for some time. We had basically, because I had skipped about 5 years, and history's a little bit in there. But we had sat back a little bit, and it sucked. In that time, after we'd, finally got the ball rolling, we finally were winning tournaments, getting on podiums. It was 7 years in, and I was getting a little bit exhausted as running the team, and building the team and constantly being the spokesperson for the team and promoting it and constantly pushing it. And then doing all the extra work in that. Besides running the team, I was building scenarios for fields under the team's name to get, 1, our name out there, and 2, to help bring scenario paintball up into our area. Because up until this point, scenario paintball was not looked at as a viable option at these fields. That is probably my longest lasting mark on Commando Paintball is that after our team shifted from a sponsorship at Commando to a sponsorship at Outdoor, he continued to pursue and find another passionate game builder. I don't want to say better, because the games that I built and the games that he builds are both equally impressive. We were both really good game builders. Yeti puts on a very good game. I put on the 5 games that I built. I put on very good games, at least from a technical standpoint. Did the execution of all the games that I built go as planned? Not necessarily. Just happens that way. You can't control players. You can't build a game that's going to control players. It just doesn't work. You got to give players enough room to hang themselves, more or less, or to buckle up. And, or you got to leave them some wiggle room. That's always been my opinion on games. They need to be that way. Just plain and simple. If a player can't be creative, especially the long-time players, I really, really, really stress to see how they can continue to find it fun. At least for me, I try to challenge a game builder. I try to challenge the opposite general by coming up with something that is completely unique, individual, and especially if the rules allow for it, I will find a way to do something funny. And even with Ghost Crew, at the last Yeti game, we had their fishing boat out and we fielded a Navy. Was it effective? No. Did the other team ever think that I would put a guy in a boat strapped down with a whole bunch of markers and 2 cases of paint? Absolutely not. That's why we did it. It was something to draw their attention away. Unfortunately, it didn't last long enough for it to be an effective plan. It was a lot of fun. We tried, but oh well, it got shut down. Whatever, you move on to the next thing. Some of the great things, I know, they cut out a couple of my really key hiding points and lockdown points, which, kind of messed with the spawn and the flow of the game. Overall, kind of, I think, messed with the flow of the games a little bit. But at the same point, they opened up other areas, which then made it more fun to play. So like, I can see it. I can see that. Now, back on track here, back to Delta and creating the team. After we had that success in the internal, and I didn't feel so comfortable leading the team anymore. I didn't want to not that I didn't want to put the work in as the team captain. I just found it incredibly hard to maintain on the tournament level. And I'm one of those people that if I can't dedicate 100% to that level, I don't really want to be involved with it. It's just one of those things that like, if I'm going to dedicate my time and my effort into it, it's going to be all or nothing. So with that being said, I tried to step back into more of a general manager role because like I was entrusted with the name. I was at that point with Mechanic being out of the game, I was practically the sole owner of the team. Between the two of us, I was the only one that was left interested in it. I couldn't, I would try and keep him updated and he just kind of fell off and I just became the sole owner. And apparently that didn't sit well when I was trying to promote one guy into the captain for the tournament squad so I can sit back and continue to be more active online and do more of the promotional stuff like this podcast, for instance. Like, had things gone a little bit differently with Delta, I probably would have started this podcast about 2 years ago already. But it just didn't work out like that. The guy I put in charge decided that he wanted to go in a completely different way, which included changing the name, changing the format, everything. And after basically playing under Delta 9 for 9 years, I lost my fire. I couldn't stand it. It was tough. It was really, really tough. And I tried to make a go of it emotionally and mentally and physically with the new team that I'd formed, and the new group, because it was the core group, but it was like the whole heart of the core players, the players that had been there for 5 years, 7 years, was gone. It was flat. It was lifeless. It just didn't feel right to me. And with that feeling, I couldn't continue to dedicate to something that I did not fully believe in. I did not fully feel all right about. It's still, to this day, I'm still a little bit upset about the way that it all went down. And even some of the people that just totally fell off of paintball after that and went back to like just once in a while, yeah, paintball's fun. These, we had guys that were just phenomenal tournament players and they just kind of fell off after that. And I think when you go and you change a team name like that, and especially when it was on such a contested and divided vote, that it kills it. It has a ripple effect. And when you cut out the one thing that's holding everybody, that's holding the core together, which was that name, that we had founded this ourselves, that we had built it from scratch, and then to be put back at square one because the one guy that I asked to just run the tournament side of things and to run just kind of the day-to-day, weekly, bi-weekly practice kind of things, because I couldn't do it because I wanted to step up in my job and I wanted to move into management, and that was going to take time and effort away from the field. Went and totally did that. It really hurt, and it hurt a lot of different players in a lot of different ways. So I guess the moral of the story is that when you guys, if you form a team and you build a team, don't ever expect anybody else to beat that drum as hard as the original core, because the original players, that name means something because they came up with it. They're bonded by it. And the longer that name is around, like in our case, we were at like the 7-year mark officially with that team name when it went down. It was devastating to the players like me, Jax, Bouge, Wilbur, who had been with us for 3 years at that point. And it affected people in a variety of ways that just, it wasn't 100% known. And I tried to back it as much as I could, but it was just so hollow. just so empty for me. And that's why I took like about a half a season off as an independent player, and then ended up joining SAS in like July of last year. Actually right before World at War, like 2 weeks before World at War, I patched over, I do believe. It was something like that. And it was good. It was good. I mean, I can't complain about SAS. I got no beef with it. I love the players. There's a lot of different people. I mean, this is a massive team. This is 2,500 people, and there's a massive team. And there are people that that are now part of SAS that were coming up, had saw me general games at under Delta and knew, just kind of knew of me before they were even part of SAS or before I was part of SAS. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. Like, to be quite honest, I mean, part of me is to hear that, like, I'm talked about in hushed circles and the things that I've pulled off and the way that I look at games. It's kind of weird, and I get told a lot that I've impacted the sport up here in this part of Wisconsin quite a bit, and for the positive. And then you get the other players that come up on this trumped up stuff that are, and I got my haters. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to have haters because when you're sponsored by, 3 different fields over the course of 9 years, and dealings and, with sponsors and stuff like that, you're going to have friends. You're going to have people that don't like you. You're going to have it all. It's paintball. It's a variety of people. You're not going to please everybody all the time. So I guess my biggest moral is that no matter how much, that my biggest takeaway from this, I guess, is that no matter how much you try and you do, man, I'm just looking for the words to phrase it. It's even though, and I don't want to say try, because to me there is no try. It's either you build the team and you stay 100% committed to it, and you got to be willing to take on the extra responsibility besides, your outside life and dedication to that. You can't expect anybody, even if they've been with the team for 2 or 3 years, to have that same level as yourself. You got to really find somebody who is just as passionate, and especially if you're going for a voluntary leader change like I was, because I just wanted to take a little bit of time off. I wanted to get back and relax because I was burned out. I mean, I was doing 3 days a week at some points, going down to fields for field prep, and then like our stuff, then promotions, then, the contract negotiations with different sponsors, and then bringing that back to the team, and then having the team not quite happy, and then having to go back to the sponsors. And it seems like it's a good thing, but after a while it becomes taxing. It really does. And especially when you're dealing with high amounts of money, and at the position I was at, like, money was the scarcity was my limiting factor at that point, and still is to this day. But I'm slowly moving up, but it's still, it's always something you have to be concerned about, because at one point I was literally homeless, going to practice every other week and working at a field. Had 2 jobs, and I was homeless because I had to have money for paint. I had to have this. I had to have that. I'm the team captain. I have to have this. And it really hurt, because the whole time as I'm doing it, I'm getting these naysayers like my parents and everybody. This is a kid's game. It's a kid's game. You're not doing yourself any favors. And you know what? It's not a kid's game. This was a game for adults that kids play under adult supervision, of course, but still, it was more than a game to me. It was a passion. It's still a passion. It's still a way of life. I immediately will have more trust for another paintballer, and especially if they're on an established team, than some Joe off the street. It's just one of those things, because I know that they go through and have had similar experiences and things like that to me. So, I mean, I can't say that Delta was a failure by any means. Delta was not a failure. We built 5 scenarios. We won numerous awards, the players on our team. I mean, Jackie won 6 individual trophies. I had won like 3. Bouge had won like another 4 or 5 as an individual player under Delta at scenarios. We then the 3 podiums, the 3 times we were on the podium, once in 5-man, once in 10-man, and all that. It was just absolutely a blessing. But anyway, guys, there's the music. I gotta get going. This was the Paintball Podcaddy. Enjoy. Hello everybody, it's SAS Scruffy here, and I would like to take a quick second and say thank you for listening to the show today. If you've liked the content or enjoyed it, please follow me on Facebook. Also, you can help support the show by going to patreon.com/inwithscruffy. If you'd like to be a guest or advertise on the show, you can email me at sas.scruffy@gmail.com. That's sas.scruffy@gmail.com. Thank you guys very much and enjoy.